Resuming adjournment debate on the budget motion, Kootenay East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, thank you. It gives me great pleasure to rise here today to give my response to the Budget 2019 on behalf of the hardworking and fun-loving people of Kootenay East. Honourable Speaker, before I start with my response to the budget, I would first like to acknowledge the passing of 4 fine community citizens in the region of Kootenay East. The names of Maxine Caldwell, Bud Abbott, Colin Campbell, and Alford City Councillor Joe Zeroni will not be forgotten, although they have been taken from our lives. These 4 individuals separately contributed much more than anyone could think humanly possible. All of them cared deeply about their communities and were leaders in their own right. Volunteers, promoters, good Samaritans, and ambassadors are something that all communities need to function properly. All 4 of these individuals were role models and exemplified what community service means, and we can only stand back and bask in the glow of the legacy that they left us all. To the families of Maxine, Bud, Colin, and Joe, we all share in your loss, not necessarily as blood relatives, although some of us are, but as community family. They have touched us all, and they will all be sorely missed. Honourable Speaker, also I'd like to thank my assistants that make my job very, very manageable. Heather Smith, Christy Wielden in Cranbrook, Wendy King here in Victoria, and as well as my expert researchers Dylan Kesslow and comm specialist Adam Luck and Stu Bertrand. Thank you for all you do. Finally, to my 3 children, Dustin with his brand new wife Julie, Allie and Adam for their contributions of support as supporting my role as MLA, and my gorgeous wife Carrie, of course, for being the rock that she is and holding down the fort. Now on to my response to the Budget 2019. And I wanted to do something a little bit different here today. I wanted to appease to the other side a little bit. Sometimes we have this left brain, right brain mentality. I wanted to not speak so much about numbers, but go into the artsy side of our brain, so maybe we can relate a little bit better. So I will clear my vocal cords a little bit. One evening as the sun went down and the jungle fire was burning, down the track came a hobo hiking, and she said, "Boys, I'm not turning. I'm headed for a land that's far away beside the crystal fountains. So come with me, we'll go and see the Big Rock Candy Mountains." So, Honourable Speaker, that's the first verse of a popular song that was written in 1895 by a fellow by the name of Harry McClintock. And he recorded it in the late 1920s, and it's entitled The Big Rock Candy Mountains. Mr. McClintock wrote the song as a road traveler, describing what paradise would look like, a fictional place that he desperately would love to find. However, after reviewing this whimsical tune, I was reminded of by my astute colleague from West Vancouver, Capilano over there. I suddenly came to realize that Mr. McClintock was much more than just a songwriting hobo. He was truly a visionary, a 19th century soothsayer, if you will, and he had the ability to predict future events. The event Mr. McClintock prophesied in 1895 was the NDP budget in 2019. Amazingly, almost 125 years later. So in the next 20 minutes, we'll see how clearly the lyrics to this classical jig perfectly aligns with the messaging of this year's budget. The Nostradamucal view of this musician will be proved much more than just coincidence. So let's dissect the song line by line, shall we? The first line, "One evening as the sun went down and the jungle fire was burning." Clearly, the reference here is to the sun going down and the jungle fire burning as the political landscape the NDP was experiencing after losing confidence of their core supporters for the acceptance of Site C, fracking practices for natural gas, which will prevent them from reaching climate targets, and the abysmal conclusion to the vote on proportional representation. The next line, "Down the track came a hobo hiking. She said, 'Boys, I'm not turning.'" The hobo coming down the track representing the budget process, would therefore logically be the finance minister saying to her cabinet that she has a clear direction and she cannot be swayed. Next line, "I'm heading for a land that's far away beside the crystal fountains. So come with me, we'll go and see the Big Rock Candy Mountains." Obviously, this is the finance minister selling her pitch to the premier and cabinet on her glorious vision of a full bounty budget, which is referred to in the song as Big Rock Candy Mountains. The budget is synonymous with the word the Big Rock Candy Mountains. The chorus of the song is somewhat self-explanatory as it describes the litany of freebies that the budget, Big Rock Candy Mountains, is prepared to offer. Let's examine that for just a moment. In the Big Rock Candy Mountains, there's a land that's fair and bright, where the handouts grow on bushes and you sleep out every night, where the boxcars are all empty and the sun shines every day on the birds and bees and the cigarette trees, the lemonade springs, where the bluebird sings in the Big Rock Candy Mountains. The first chorus illustrates that the budget proposed appears to be a very happy place, with singing birds and lemonade springs, which clearly describe Site C. Also with handouts growing on bushes, perhaps that's referring to the Child Opportunity Fund. However, this part of the song does paint some conflicting foreshadows, pointing out empty boxcars, which is signaling an empty economy with our natural resources, such as mining and forest products not going out to export, an empty train, if you will. Sleeping out every night certainly predicts the lack of projected housing due to a severe drop in housing starts, 26%, over the next 3 years, as the budget mentions. More disturbingly, in this part of the foreshadowing I was talking about, the inclusion of cigarette trees proves there is a cancerous overtone to this budget that is secretly hidden within the landscape. So let's skip to second verse, which may pull some of this prediction even closer to reality, shall we? In the Big Rock Candy Mountains, all the cops have wooden legs, and all the bulldogs have rubber teeth, and the hens lay soft-boiled eggs. This certainly refers to what the Attorney General feels about the enforcement on the money laundering issue. The AG believes police or the investigators have been ineffective, cops having wooden legs. However, the reality is that the Attorney General has no bite to solving this crisis. That's referring to the bulldog with rubber teeth. The hen that lays soft-boiled eggs means more goodies in the budget. However, they are soft, meaning perhaps referring to the interest-free loans to postgraduate students, which is a good idea, but on average, this benefit will save the average student $2,600 over 10 years, which is just over $20 a month. It's admirable and welcome, but it's not really a game changer to strengthening our economy. Next line. The farmers' trees are full of fruits and the barns are full of hay. This line clearly demonstrates the NDP singing the song to British Columbians that, don't worry, the budget's balanced and we have oodles of money. We have a surplus! Exclamation mark. That being said, the surplus they are talking about here is on a razor's edge, Madam Speaker. At only $274 million, this budget is dependent on many variables and unknowns, such as global economic turndowns in China, a one-time federal transfer payment of $1.6 billion, emergency spending such as forest fires that we've seen in the last 2 years at record levels, and flooding, trade with the new U.S. and Canada trade agreement that's just brand new, and particularly the U.S. steel tariffs on Canadian steel, that will affect our economy. The success of LNG Canada, which is not a done deal by any means, and it's on a grim course right now, perhaps. And what about random costs, such as perhaps maybe a measles outbreak? These all things affect the budget, and the budget is on a razor's edge. So let's continue, shall we? Oh, I'm bound to go where there ain't no snow, where the rain don't fall, the wind don't blow, in the Big Rock Candy Mountains. This is clearly a hidden message directed as a slant on rural British Columbia. The Lower Mainland has an attractive climate compared to the rest of rugged regions of our province. The budget completely ignores rural BC. It gives us nothing. It gives nothing to our search and rescue efforts, which is invaluable to our rugged terrain. There's absolutely nothing for wildlife in this budget and ecosystem restoration. I come from the Kootenays, and a lot of us from rural British Columbia were majorly disappointed on the lack of funding for, like I said, search and rescue. Our wildlife in my region is in total decimation right now. Ungulates are at an all-time low, and we're seeing lots of other conflicting things as far as caribou recovery, uncertainty, no consultation. So clearly in the message, Mr. McClintock prophesied this 125 years earlier. Truly remarkable. So if you want the goodies in this song, it clearly says, oh, I'm bound to go where there ain't no snow. Victoria, other than last week, has no snow. So if you want the goodies, you have to go where there ain't no snow, which is urban BC. We see lots of stuff in the budget on some bridges and schools down the Lower Mainland, but nothing in rural BC. So let's move on with the song, shall we? In the Big Rock Candy Mountains, you never change your socks, and the little streams of alcohol come trickling down the rocks. This is another reference to the economy here stating that nobody changed their socks, obviously, because they never get dirty from work, as the budget does not spell out a jobs plan. No jobs plan in here at all. So in this fantasy land, nobody changed their socks, nobody's working, clearly. A jobs plan is critical to building an economy as well as building opportunities for all. The Premier himself has said that British Columbians are currently working 2 or 3 jobs, and he is the leader of government. That is why a high-skilled jobs plan is so important. But it seems this government is complacent with clean socks that never need to get changed. The alcohol trickling down the rocks is symbolic for trickle-down economics, I would think. The irony placed here by the songwriter is the harm to the economy that will not come from a no jobs plan, and that trickle-down economics will not happen with all the taxes that have been implemented. 19 new or increased taxes this government has brought forward, over $5.5 billion. This is not something that's going to drive our economy. This is something that's going to stagnate us. And this has once again been prophesized. I believe the songwriter was having a little tongue-in-cheek fun with this line in the song, and it would be quite humorous if it wasn't so devastating to so many families and communities. So the song continues, "The brakemen have to tip their hats and the railroad bulls are blind." This clearly illustrates the railroad being the substitute pipeline for the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Railroad bulls are essentially a slang term for railroad police. You would probably remember that member from West Vancouver, Capilano, the old slang term for railroad bulls. That's back in the earlier days of transportation. But the transportation of oil by rail is a lot more dangerous than by pipeline, Madam Speaker. The fact that the government wants to use trains for the transportation of oil is for political reasons. The government therefore needs the public and all those associated with it to be blind to this fact, and that's where the railroad bulls are blind. Continuing on, there's a lake of stew and of whiskey too. You can paddle all around them in a big canoe in the Big Rock Candy Mountain. There's a lot of symbolism here, and no question this segment speaks about the Clean BC plan, and the paddling around in a big canoe is symbolic for electric vehicles. The lakes of stew and whiskey are the bounty of cash this project will receive from the budget. Unfortunately, these lakes will not be near big enough, as the NDP have shortchanged the plan, offering up only 15% of what the carbon tax brings in. The rest going to general revenue for pet projects. The carbon tax will bring in approximately $6 billion in revenue over the next 3 years as we go from $35 a ton to $50 a ton, making our resource sector that much more or less competitive. For the Clean BC plan, to only get $900 million of that $6 billion is such a disappointment, especially to our members from the Green Party who thought they would be able to have some influence over this current government. The prediction in this song is truly amazing. 125 years ago. Wouldn't you agree? I do. As we head into the final stanza of the song of Revelations, we tie it all together. In the Big Rock Candy Mountains, the jails are made of tin, and you can walk right out again as soon as you are in. This is very apparent that the jails are symbolic for the revolving doors of promises that the NDP have made. There is no conviction to keep promises in place. Once a promise is made, it finds its way in, and then out the back door again instantly. The budget doesn't address the big promises of $10 a day daycare. There's no $400 renter's rebate. 114,000 affordable units seem to be extremely out of reach. A land that welcomes broken promises is exactly where the NDP would like to go. Next line. There ain't no short-handled shovels, no axes, saws, or picks. Where you sleep all day, where they hung the jerk that invented work in the Big Rock Candy Mountains. The reference to axes and saws is obviously talking about the forest sector, and the mining sector and the mining industry is symbolized by picks. The fact that none of these working tools have handles or fail to exist at all suggests that these sectors are not recognized in the budget and will fail miserably in the coming cycle. To Mr. McClintock's credit, the 2019 budget does verify a drop in resource revenue of 30%. So this is essentially confirmed by Mr. McClintock's prophecy. Honourable Speaker, being BC Mining Day yesterday, this is doubly disappointing for me. as being the mining critic, and the miners and the suppliers I talked to last night, they're very disappointed in this year's budget on essentially nothing to support the mining sector. Well, we got 20, I hear a member on the other side speaking about $20 million, but quite honestly, Madam Speaker, $20 million to add further bureaucracy and tie things up is really something they don't want to see at all, I would think. So we'll continue with the songs. I got the ear of some of the members over there. They're actually truly amazed by the prophecy that this man wrote. So where you sleep all day, where you hung the jerk that invented work in the Big Rock Candy Mountains. The description of hanging the jerk that invented work is a distasteful insult to the BC Liberal Party that did have a jobs plan and was determined to put many British Columbians back to work with highly skilled and highly paid full-time jobs. This budget does not mention anything about a jobs plan. It wasn't almost until the very end, when I listened to the finance minister's speech. It was about 55 minutes into the speech was the first time I heard the word jobs come up. And that's once again prophesized here. It is truly amazing that Harry McClintock, the writer of this song, would be able to see the hatred the NDP has of BC Liberals 125 years ago, and especially after the BC Liberals had 16 years of good governments that boasted the best economy in the country, lowest unemployment, highest AAA credit rating in North America, lowest personal taxes to those under $125,000, and the list is long. Maybe, 16 years wasn't quite as bad as the other side always seems to say. It was a very positive time in our provincial economy. The final line of the song says, I'll see you all this coming fall in the Big Rock Candy Mountains. This clearly, once again, states the continuous motion of this budget and other things that have been put forward, kicking projects down the road, such as the Child Opportunity Fund, which is planned to come online until the fall of 2020, almost 2 years from now, 20 months from now, and it's in this year's budget. That also speaks to the endless trough of task force consults, reviews, examinations that do nothing to actually consult with everyday British Columbians. The Caribou Recovery Program, it immediately comes to mind when I think of that. Industry, user groups, stakeholders, and everyday citizens have essentially been shut out of any input whatsoever. I look at the Child Opportunity Fund being proposed in this year's budget, and it actually makes me shake my head a little bit, where something that's not coming online until the fall of 2020 is proposed in the budget of 2019. If they understood, and they clearly do because they've said it, that if this plan doesn't come online until 2020, then why wouldn't you put it in the budget of 2020? Why are you holding this carrot out for people with these false hopes that we've seen so many other times before? It's a hollow budget. So when you think of famous soothsayers and prophets throughout history, we immediately think of the brilliant minds such as Nostradamus, of course, and Stephen Hawking was quite a visionary, Benjamin Franklin, the blind prophet Baba Vanga, Biff Tannen, another, he was from Back to the Future. I don't know if you remember Biff. That might not be quite the same. He did have Marty McFly's almanac, so he wasn't really legit, but I'll throw Biff in there as well. We should also be adding Harry McClintock with his predictions of this year's budget, almost 125 years later. Truly amazing. So, Honourable Speaker, I think I got a little bit more time. The budget highlights what we would expect from this government. It's taxing and spending at a record rate. Nothing about how we generate revenues, and there's no jobs program on how we lift up British Columbians to highly skilled and highly paid jobs. No real funding to our natural resource sector, which is projected to drop 30% in the upcoming years. No funding to rural BC for agriculture, ranching, wildlife, our poor search and rescue operators who give their volunteer time and save lives, especially in my riding and the riding to the member next to me from Columbia River Revelstoke. These are really solid, salt-of-the-earth people, so there's nothing for them. This budget appears to be more and more of a campaign speech than anything else to me, Madam Speaker. I look at it and I say, this is a populist-type speech that's trying to get the ear of people that want to listen to this stuff. Nothing about $10 daycare, that's been ignored. Renters rebate, like I said, 114,000 affordable homes, not on the table. Truly hollow. So, Honourable Speaker, I'm going to cut her short there. I wanted to give you quality, not quantity here today. So, Honourable Speaker, on behalf of myself, the Kootenay East Riding, and Mr. McClintock, who wrote the amazing song, and the constituents of Kootenay East, I cannot support this hollow budget. Thank you.